Linda Parker wasn't expecting a perfect Thanksgiving. Not this year. Not with the new apartment that smelled faintly of old paint and lemon cleaner. Not with her hours at the grocery store getting cut again, and certainly not after Greg's latest campaign commercial, where he talked about family values like he invented the term. But she still expected a dinner, a seat at the table she raised her kids at, a place in the home she once filled with laughter and cinnamon rolls. So when her phone buzzed that Wednesday evening, she smiled before she even answered. "Emily, hey sweetheart, are you at the store? Need me to bring the gravy boat?" But Emily's silence lingered too long. Then Jacob's voice, hushed, as if rehearsed, drifted through the speaker. "Mom, we think it's better if you sit this year out." Linda laughed at first. A soft, confused chuckle. "Sit out? Sit what out?" Another pause. A whispered argument between the siblings. Emily's trembling breath returned. "Thanksgiving, the dinner. It's kinda crowded this year. And with everything going on, it's just better." The words landed like stones. Heavy, cold, final. Linda pressed her palm against her forehead, the ache spreading behind her eyes. "Crowded? Emily, I've been coming to this dinner your whole lives. What is this really about?" Neither answered, but Linda could hear what they weren't brave enough to say. They were embarrassed. Embarrassed of her smaller life, her smaller income, her smaller space. "Okay," Linda whispered, her voice breaking even as she forced it steady. "If that's what you want." They hung up quickly, too quickly. She stared at her reflection in the dark phone screen, and for the first time in years, Linda felt truly disposable. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a cold, gray sky, one of those Wisconsin days where even the sun couldn't be bothered to show up. Linda Parker woke to the quiet hum of her refrigerator, the only sound in her cramped apartment. For a moment, half asleep, she forgot the phone call. She forgot the way Emily's voice trembled and how Jacob kept whispering in the background, urging her sister to just say it. But the memory crawled back the second she opened her eyes. This was the first Thanksgiving she wouldn't be with her children. Not because she was sick, not because she was traveling, but because they didn't want her there. She tried to distract herself, cleaned the already clean kitchen table, straightened the stack of mail she couldn't bear to open, rearranged the single-potted plant in the living room. But no matter what she touched, the apartment stayed painfully still. No turkey smell, no laughter, no clattering pans or heated debates about who ruined the mashed potatoes last year. Around 3 p.m. she finally gave up pretending and opened the freezer. A single microwavable turkey dinner. Plastic tray. Artificial gravy. "Happy Thanksgiving, Linda." She heated it in silence, the microwave beeping twice, almost mockingly, when it finished. Sitting alone at her tiny bistro table, she picked at the meal, each bite reminding her of what she'd lost. Her throat tightened when she glanced at the framed photo of Emily and Jacob as toddlers, both covered in flour from their first pie-making disaster. Back then, they begged to have her at the table. Now, they couldn't wait to get rid of her. Linda pushed the tray away, appetite gone. The loneliness pressed against her chest like a weight. She had no idea yet, no clue, that this quiet, hollow Thanksgiving was about to explode into something far louder than heartbreak. By late afternoon, Linda's tiny apartment felt even smaller, as if the walls themselves had inched closer. She settled onto her couch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, telling herself she just needed a little noise, any noise, to drown out the silence. She grabbed the remote and began flipping through channels. Cooking shows filled with families gathered around golden turkeys, commercials promising the perfect holiday, sitcom reruns with canned laughter that made her chest ache. Click, 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 nothing stuck. Nothing felt bearable. She sighed and pressed the button again, ready to keep scrolling, when something on the screen made her hand freeze midair. A wide shot of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Bright floats, confetti, marching bands, joy everywhere. But none of that is what stopped her breath. It was the two faces, sitting front and center, waving as if they didn't have a care in the world. Emily, Jacob. Linda blinked, leaning forward as if the sofa suddenly tilted. Her stomach twisted, her fingertips went cold. She turned up the volume just to make sure her eyes weren't betraying her. There they were, her children, smiling, laughing, practically glowing under the holiday lights. Emily wore a scarf Linda had knitted last year. Jacob was holding a cup of hot cocoa, the exact kind Linda made for him every Thanksgiving morning. Her throat tightened. She clutched the blanket like a lifeline. "How?" she whispered to no one. Her kids weren't at a crowded dinner. They weren't too stressed. They weren't avoiding a chaotic holiday. They were celebrating, publicly, joyfully, without her. And whatever this was, it had been planned. Carefully, deliberately. Linda felt something stir deep inside her. A mix of hurt, disbelief, and something colder. Something that whispered, "This goes deeper than you think." Linda's heart thudded in her chest as the camera zoomed closer to the parade's VIP section. Emily leaned forward in her seat, waving with perfect posture, while Jacob adjusted his jacket like he knew the entire country was watching. They looked polished, prepared, practiced. Then the interviewer approached them with a bright smile, the kind that didn't come naturally but came with a paycheck. "And here we have the Parker Peterson family," the reporter announced, voice booming with cheer. "Joining us today thanks to Greg Peterson's wonderful support for the parade and community." Linda's breath caught. Parker Peterson. The old married name, the name Greg insisted on using during his political rise because it sounded stronger. The reporter continued. "Greg Peterson is making big waves with his campaign this season, and what better way to show those family values than spending Thanksgiving together?" Family values. Linda nearly laughed, bitter and sharp, as her hand trembled around the remote. Family values, but no invitation for the mother who raised those kids almost single-handedly. Emily chimed in with a perfectly rehearsed line. "We're just so proud of Dad, and it's amazing to be here supporting him today." Jacob nodded enthusiastically, adding, "It's a tradition for us to spend Thanksgiving as a family." Tradition? A family? Linda's jaw clenched. Hard. The truth hit her like a cold gust of November wind. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't even about her losing her job or her apartment. Greg Peterson had orchestrated everything. The uninvitation, the secrecy, the carefully crafted lie. He wanted a picture-perfect family for his campaign. But she wasn't part of the picture anymore. A slow, simmering anger curled through Linda's chest, warming the numbness. They hadn't just excluded her, they had erased her. Linda's hands were clenched so tightly around the remote that her knuckles turned white. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Emily and Jacob, sitting proudly beside Greg, smiling for the cameras, completely unaware, or worse, deliberately ignoring, the mother who had been there for every scraped knee, every late-night homework panic, every Thanksgiving dinner for the past 20 years. And then, something unexpected caught her eye. A figure slipped into the background, almost too fast to notice at first. A camera operator, crouched behind the railing, adjusting the lens, murmuring instructions into a headset. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Tom Reynolds, her neighbor. The retired cameraman she had helped just months ago when he'd twisted his ankle at the grocery store. The man who had always smiled softly at her, who often lingered to share a cup of coffee or offer a quiet word about her troubles. Why was he here? Linda's mind raced. He didn't belong in the front row spectacle. He wasn't part of Greg's polished PR team, or at least, he wasn't supposed to be. Yet, there he was, just a shadow in the chaos, invisible to everyone else. A shiver ran down her spine as a dangerous thought formed. What if Tom had noticed her children? What if he knew? Her pulse quickened. Something told her he had. And something inside her, buried beneath the heartbreak and anger, flickered with hope. Maybe, just maybe, the one person she had helped in her darkest months could now be the one to help her turn this carefully staged lie upside down. But first, she had to wait. She had to watch. Because in situations like this, timing wasn't just everything, it was power. Linda's eyes were glued to the TV, her fingers curling into the edge of the couch cushion. She could barely breathe as the parade continued, the camera shifting from the floats to the VIP seating. Emily and Jacob laughed at the announcer's jokes, waving for the cameras with effortless charm. Every gesture, every smile, felt like a dagger to Linda's chest. And then it happened. Tom Reynolds moved, not into the spotlight, but within it. With the skill of a veteran, he adjusted the camera just slightly, his lens finding a perfect, intimate angle. The shot lingered a fraction longer than usual, and in that moment Linda saw it. Emily's lips moving, Jacob leaning closer to listen. "I feel awful. Mom should have been here," Emily whispered, barely audible to anyone else. It was so small, so fleeting, that anyone watching casually might have missed it. But Linda saw every tremor in her daughter's hand, every hesitation in her voice, the vulnerability, the guilt. It was all there. Her chest tightened, a mix of heartbreak and vindication coursing through her. Finally, there was proof. Proof that her children hadn't forgotten her entirely. Proof that the lie, the image Greg had so meticulously orchestrated, was cracking. Linda's mind raced. Tom had noticed them. He had chosen this exact moment to capture the truth. Her pulse quickened as a spark ignited in her chest. This wasn't just a parade anymore. This was an opportunity. An opening. And Linda, for the first time that day, felt the tiniest edge of hope. Because if the truth could be caught on camera, the lie could be exposed. And justice, her justice, was just beginning to take shape. By the next morning, Linda's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications, alerts, messages from strangers. Her eyes scanned the headlines, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The clip of Emily whispering, "I feel awful, Mom should have been here," had exploded online. Millions had watched, millions had shared, and millions had reacted with outrage, sympathy, and disbelief. Her children's faces, caught between obligation and guilt, were now immortalized for everyone to see. And Greg Peterson's campaign? Shattered. News outlets dissected every angle of the parade footage. Headlines screamed, "Political candidate stages family Thanksgiving," and "Ex-wife left out of holiday celebration, public outcry ensues." Greg's carefully crafted family values image was crumbling faster than anyone could anticipate. Linda felt a strange mixture of vindication and disbelief. Her pain, her isolation, the uninvitation, it was finally visible. And it wasn't just a whisper in her apartment anymore. It was a roar. Her phone rang. She didn't answer. Emails poured in. She didn't read them all. Reporters were camped outside her building, curious neighbors called, and the internet debate raged like wildfire. And through it all, Linda realized something. The lie had been enormous, but the truth had been unstoppable. Somewhere deep inside, a smoldering satisfaction began to grow. She hadn't needed to confront Greg yet. He was already facing the consequences. The image of her children's discomfort, captured and magnified for all to see, was a quiet but undeniable victory. For the first time, Linda understood the power of timing, observation, and patience. Sometimes, revenge didn't need to be loud. It needed only to be true. And the truth, as it turned out, was louder than any staged smile Greg could muster. Linda was sipping her morning coffee when a hesitant knock echoed through her small apartment. Her heart skipped. She wasn't expecting anyone, until the door rattled again, firmer this time. With a deep breath, she opened it. Emily and Jacob stood there, their faces pale, eyes red-rimmed. Their jackets hung loosely, as if they had forgotten how to carry themselves under the weight of guilt. Emily's hands twisted nervously in front of her, and Jacob's lips trembled. "Mom," Emily began, her voice barely above a whisper. We messed up." Jacob stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Dad, Greg, he made us do it. He said it was important for his campaign, that we just couldn't tell you." Linda's chest ached, a mix of anger and relief clawing at her throat. She listened quietly, letting them spill the truth. They confessed everything: the rehearsed smiles, the staged TV appearance, the guilt they'd carried through the parade, and the pressure from Greg that had silenced their better instincts. Tears ran freely down Emily's cheeks. Jacob's hands shook as he fumbled with the doorframe. "We're so sorry, Mom. We should have stood up to him. We should have invited you." Linda lifted a hand, stopping them. She felt the wave of emotions: hurt, betrayal, and, beneath it all, a glimmer of satisfaction. She had heard the truth. Not from social media, not from the viral clip, but directly from her children. For the first time, she held the upper hand. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice steady, commanding. "You're telling me now. And yes, you're sorry. But that doesn't mean everything is fixed." They nodded, sobbing, knowing the path to forgiveness would be guided by her rules, not Greg's, not theirs. For Linda, the day had shifted. The tears weren't just theirs. They were hers, too. Linda sat back in her chair after the door closed, the faint echo of Emily and Jacob's apologies still ringing in her ears. The apartment felt quieter now, but in a different way: charged, alive, and electric. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with a single, unassuming video file from Tom Reynolds. Her heart skipped. She had nearly forgotten. Tom had promised her something if she ever needed it, a favor for the months of kindness she'd shown him. And now, here it was, raw footage from the parade, uncut, unpolished, every whispered word, every glance, every hesitation, captured in perfect clarity. Linda watched Emily lean close to Jacob and hear the words she had missed the first time. "I feel awful. Mom should have been here." The power of that single moment hit her like a wave. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She had proof. Evidence of the lie. Evidence of Greg's manipulation and the guilt her children had been forced to carry. A slow, calculating warmth spread through her chest. The injustice of the day, the uninvitation, the staged smiles, the public humiliation, was now hers to wield. She didn't feel rushed. She didn't need to act immediately. With this secret advantage, she could plan carefully, control the narrative, and decide how and when to reveal the truth. For the first time in years, Linda realized she wasn't powerless. Not anymore. The viral clip had exposed the cracks, but this raw footage was the key. And Linda finally understood one crucial thing. Sometimes, the quietest weapon is the one no one sees coming. Revenge, Patience whispered, was an art. And Linda was about to become its master. By the evening, the world had changed. Notifications buzzed endlessly on Linda's phone, emails piled up in her inbox, and reporters lingered near her building, hoping for a statement. Emily and Jacob hovered nervously, waiting for her to react. Even Greg Peterson had called twice, his voice strained, polite, desperate. Linda didn't answer, not yet. She walked to the window, looking out at the quiet Wisconsin street below. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't known since the divorce. Her kids wanted forgiveness, her ex wanted damage control, and the world wanted a spectacle. But she, Linda Parker, had the power now. The truth had been revealed. The staged smiles and polished lies had crumbled. The guilt, the whispers, the hesitation had been caught, magnified, immortalized. And she held the key. She turned back to Emily and Jacob, their eyes wide, mouths slightly open, still unsure if they'd been forgiven. "This Thanksgiving," she said softly but firmly, "the table has room for exactly who I choose to sit here, no one else. And it's my rules, my house, my table." A mixture of relief and awe crossed their faces. They nodded, understanding. They had been humbled. As for Greg, the campaign team had learned the hard way. Image couldn't erase truth. Linda didn't need to call him, didn't need to perform for the cameras. She had her life back, her dignity intact, and her family, on her terms. That night, Linda set the table, not for pretense, not for appearances, but for warmth, laughter, and real connection. Thanksgiving was no longer a wound. It was her victory. And for Linda Parker, the first bite of her carefully prepared turkey tasted sweeter than any revenge she could have imagined.